She was still legally married 4 days into our marriage, and it was annulled that day. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Zone Stories. Today we have a story where this woman took all the money from her husband's bank account to stay with her partner. It's a complete story with an update. Let's see how this story ended. This happened almost 20 years ago. I never had what you would call a healthy marriage to my first wife, and there were a lot of red flags I overlooked in the beginning, because I had no real experience dealing with older women. I was 23 at the time and she was 28. To keep it short, I signed up to join the military after 9/11. I knew we were going to war and knew I was getting deployed. I did my basic at Knox and got stationed at Fort Riley, Kansas. My wife and I argued a lot at this point because she wanted to move, and I reminded her that it's not up to me where we go. I'm Uncle Sam's property till my tour is over. Needless to say, shortly after being stationed at Riley, orders came down that we would be deploying to Iraq. For as much as we argued, we had bedroom activity many times over the next few weeks. It was almost like when we first met, so I obviously didn't think anything was wrong. Fast forward to deployment day and we're both a mess, I'm sure you can imagine. I'll spare you the boring details of the flight over because it's really not much to tell. We hit ground in Kuwait and I was across attached to 234 armor, big boy stuff. We were tasked with securing various locations for rebuild and reuse. Can't give more details than that. I was deployed for 3 months before we had a post set up enough to receive mail and make calls home from a satellite phone. The first few times I called I got no answer, and mail started to flow for everyone but me. Care packages from family members came once a week, and every week I waited for a letter or something from back home. And every week nothing came, no phone calls were answered. It got to a point where other soldiers started donating things to me, because I had nothing but standard tea of 50. 9 months in and still no letters, packages, or phone calls from my wife, and at this point I was mentally not in a good place. I was at a very bad place, that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm told I need to take leave and go home, not knowing why I'm sent home only to come home to an empty house. When I say empty, I mean completely empty to include my clothes. Later I find out through my neighbors that she had moved some dude into my house for 4 months, and the rumor was she was pregnant. It gets better, she stopped making my car payments and it was repoed, cleaned out the bank accounts, and run up the credit cards buying new household items for her new place. She would camp out at the ATM and wait for my pay to hit my account and withdraw all the money except some change. I would have tried that, but the nearest ATM was 5 to 7 miles away, and I had no car and it was the dead of winter in Kansas. Let me tell you, washing your cloths in the sink and drying them on the railing on the step every day, because you don't have a washing machine or a dryer, wasn't fun. I also had to beg for MREs from supply. Because I had no money to eat, she made sure of that. I saw her for about 10 minutes before out processing from the military at that time. She decided to let me know she was having twins and obviously they weren't mine. And Judge Advocate General's Corps doesn't give care about the soldier, just the spouse, and even though she cheated she was still entitled to my check, which she was taking. We're obviously divorced, and I left at a good bit of the other stuff she did, because if I'd put it all in this would be a novel. If you want to know, I'll post it later. Here's an update and some of the more personal details I left out of the original post. When I got back to the States and saw my empty house, something inside broke, which I'm sure most of you can relate, but I was also severely shell-shocked. I'm old school, that's what we called it back then. At the time I wasn't in contact with family, so I had no contact with people aside from the wife that had abandoned me. Friends, I tell you, staring at those silent walls, hearing voices, and near wanting to respond to then contest your sanity to its limit. My commander knew something wasn't right, because I had gone from about 220 pounds down to 170 in about 1 month due to stress, lack of food, not sleeping, and jogging 3 miles every night to quiet the voices in my head. I was eventually committed to Topeka Hospital for treatment. Prior to this, I hadn't really spoken to my ex-wife, and since I had been back, I'd seen her around post driving a car she bought in my name with a general power of attorney. I was now at my lowest, sitting in a mental hospital, broken mentally and physically, and wanted nothing more than for it all to end. Let me tell you, if you've ever been in one of those places before, you know it's a different animal. I mean, you will see things that make you question how bad you really got it. Don't get me wrong, my situation was terrible, but it could have been worse. I get the notice that I have a visitor, and guess who? My ex-wife, a full 6 to 7 months pregnant, who basically came to see if she could finish the job. You're not going to believe this, and honestly, if it hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have believed it either. She told me everything. That she had moved him in 2 weeks after I was deployed, and the affair had been going on for a year. Every time I went out for a field operation, he was there, and that they had planned to leave as soon as I got back, but decided it was better to be out before I got back. At this point, I was completely seeing red, and it took every ounce of my mental strength and discipline not to fly over the desk and break both feet off in her cheating back. I don't know what came over me, but I got this crazy calm, and I guess my poker face came out. I remember the look on her face changing from a smug witchy, "I hope you rot in here" look to what? I remember feeling like a passenger in my own body, because I wasn't controlling my mouth at this point. I said, "So is there a point here, or are you just bored?" She said, "I'm taking the rest of what you owe me." I said, "I didn't owe you anything that you haven't already taken. What more can you take? You got my money and now my freedom, and I have one question for you. What did I did to you that was so bad I deserve this?" Her answer, "I wasn't happy." That answer solidified in my mind that I needed to get out of here and as far away from her as possible. I said, "I'm done," and got up without speaking another word. I'm not proud of this part, but it is what I needed to do. I spent the next month in every session giving the perfect performance of normal as I could. I had some setbacks, but for the most part I nailed it. The reason I said I'm not proud of it is because I faked it 100%. I was released 2 months later. The damage was done, and this, friends, was when I realized how bad I really was over the 2 months I was in the hospital. She had stopped taking all my money, and was leaving about $300 out of each check. I guess it was better than nothing. I fell into alcoholism horribly, and was blowing my little bit of money on alcohol and going to the clubs. I was completely out of control. I figured I have nothing, so I got nothing to lose. This went on for about 2.5 more months of alcohol, clubs, and bedroom activity with barracks rats. Military members know what this is, until I got papers to out process. And I remember asking the non-official cover on duty, "Since I get paid tomorrow, and I'm technically out of the army today, do I have to pay my soon-to-be ex?" No. My God, I finally got thrown a bone. I asked for the earliest flight I could get, hopped on the plane, and watched Kansas get smaller and smaller in the window, and it was the best feeling in the world. How she got hers, there's really a whole other story in between, but I'll get right to the part where she got hers. About 2 years after that, I get served divorce papers. Yes, I know I should have filed, and I'm sweating, because we know how this goes for most men. And at the time I was dating my current wife. So my father, my GF, and I head down to the courthouse, and I saw her there with a friend, and she instantly looks at my GF, and I can see the anger and jealousy well up in her eyes, because my GF is an upgrade in pretty much every way from her imaginable, and she knew it. We got into court, and at first it seemed like it was going to go as I thought, till the judge, another woman, saw that I was deployed, and that there was kids involved. When the ex hurriedly tried to rush past that, the judge asked what was the arrangement. I said, "They aren't my children, Your Honor." She again looked at her paperwork. A close friend of mine reminded me that she was married before, so when I got the divorce papers, I went downtown to pull those records to see when was her absolute divorce from her first husband. And guess what? She was still legally married 4 days into our marriage, and it was annulled that day. The best part was her plea to the judge that I knew she was still married. The judge said, "That doesn't matter. You knew you were still married to your first husband, and you still said yes, I'll see you again for polygamy." The situation that I had suffered was over. I married my GF 2 years after that and had a son. We are 10 years into our marriage, and the last time my father saw my ex was on a bus stop with her 2 kids. Sometimes we have to go through terrible situation to get to the roses on the other side. It takes real strength to reason from logic and anger. He is a real man for staying that calm during her conversation with her, admitting, "I have been with my boyfriend since 2020, and things were going really well. We had problems, of course, but we talked through things and loved and supported each other. We had plans to get married one day. We're beginning to save to buy a house and be able to get married. And we adopted a cat and signed a lease for next year together. I trusted him fully, and we both knew each other's phone passwords, but I never felt the need to look through his phone. We had a big fight one night at the end of August. We never really fought often, but when we did, they would tend to be big fights. And it ended with tears and me telling him that in the last year I had not been happy. This was not really a lie, but it wasn't the full truth. I suffer from chronic depression and anxiety, and all the stress of my senior year of nursing school coupled with working long night shift hours at a hospital was incredibly triggering to me. It was wrong, but I projected this onto my boyfriend. We made up that night, but the distance lingered. In hindsight, I should have noticed that something was wrong, but I hadn't been the best partner for my boyfriend then, and he suffered. He told me that he felt unseen, unwanted, unloved, and in general, like I didn't want him. It destroys me that I made him feel like that, and it hurts me more that I was so self-involved that I didn't notice him hurting so deeply. The only thing I noticed that we weren't having bedroom activity for some time, which I am so ashamed of. On November 14th, he left his phone in my car while I was dropping him and his friend off at a woodworking club. We had been intimate for a while now, and things were significantly better than they were after our fight. We were happy. I decided that I wanted to take photos for him on his phone to surprise him, but in the corner of his camera, I saw the image of a woman. We had never had issues with dirty film, and I never believed that dirty film was a bad thing. But against my better judgment, I looked through his camera roll. I found so many photos of other women, but it was all dirty film, so although I was hurt, I couldn't blame him. But then I saw photos of women off of Tinder, and I felt sick. These photos were dated ranging from mid-October to early November. The photos from Tinder made me want to check his messages, and that's when I found messages that spanned back to September 3rd with a girl named Emily. They were flirty and clearly they were interested in each other, trying to figure out when to meet up. They went out on a date to one of his and my favorite restaurants on September 14th late at night, around 10 p.m. He was supposed to come sleep with me in my apartment that night, but he texted me saying that he had too much homework and couldn't come over around 2 a.m. after not having heard back from him in hours. He texted her the next day to apologize about the mess in his apartment. Their texts were consistent until a little after their date, but he would still sporadically text her, the last one being on November 10th, with him asking if she was still interested in talking and if she wanted to go out while he was at a bar with his friend. The texts made me feel sick, and after picking him up from his club, I confronted him in my apartment. He acted cagey, insisting that she was just a friend, and that he needed a friend because of the way I had treated him. He said that they had met in a class, and that he just let her flirt with him, and he flirted back because he needed attention, because I wouldn't give him any. He told me that the Tinder photos on his phone were old, and that they were backed up from the cloud, because he's been having problems with his phone lately. He deleted the texts immediately, and deleted his Tinder account. He said that their date was not really a date, and that he, Emily, and her two roommates went to Jimmy John's, had a group hangout, and then stopped by his apartment briefly to pick something up. He swears that he texted her that night at the bar because he wanted to set her up with his friend. He was adamant the whole time that he did not have any physical or intimate interest in her. He truly seemed apologetic and he cried with me, both of us heartbroken that things had ever gotten this bad. My world had been ripped apart, and suddenly our plans to move to a new city together, get married, buy a house, and build a life seemed so blurry. But I wanted it all back, and he does too. My sense of self-worth has tanked. I don't feel attractive anymore, and I certainly don't feel like he even really wants me anymore. He cried at the thought that I don't think he wants me. He says that I make him want to move mountains, and that I am his future in his world. But the sting and slap of the betrayal is still there. I've decided that I want to stay with him, and I know that healing will be a long process, and that it will be hard, but he is my world and my best friend. It was probably stupid of me, but I reached out to Emily over social media because his story just was adding up, and it wasn't sitting right with me. She finally responded to me on Friday night in the middle of a long shift. She confirmed that they went on a date on the day the text said, but she revealed several things I wasn't ready for. They met on Tinder, and she had screenshots of his profile to confirm it. They had started talking on the app 2 days before they started texting, September 1st. I don't know how long he was on Tinder, and she can't access his profile anymore because he deleted it. She also revealed that they did go to my favorite restaurant, and that she only has one roommate, who was not there. After their dinner, he wanted to go back to her apartment, but she said no, and she said that after some hesitation he suggested that they go to his apartment. At his apartment, which she described well, she says that they made out on the sofa and the bed, but did not have bedroom activity, because she was on her period. She showed me screenshots of their texts too. When I confronted him about what she told me, he was defensive and denied meeting her on Tinder several times, before finally admitting that he did meet on Tinder. When I asked him why he lied, he said that if he had started with how they really met, I wouldn't have listened to a single thing he said. He said that I didn't actually care about how they met, and that I only cared that this means that the Tinder photos on his phone were recent. I was hurt and livid hearing this, and knowing that he still chose to actively lie to me when he knew that he was risking our futures. It does matter to me about how they met, because his cheating went from a crime of opportunity, because she was just there, to him actively seeking a woman out. He still insisted even today that they did not caress, and did not go to the restaurant. I don't believe him. I believe that he's trickle-truthing me and that what Emily said was true. He is hurting me so much, and I felt like we had been making progress, and now it feels like he ripped a rug out from under me. And now I'm desperately grasping for something at square one. I don't know how to make him realize that trickle-truthing me will only hurt our healing, but I can't force him to tell me the truth. He says that he's terrified that I'll leave him any day, and that he worries that I'm never really forgive him. I don't know how to reassure him. Maybe I'm selfish, but right now I'm filled with so much grief and I feel like I'm drowning, and I don't know what to do. Everybody says that I should leave, but I love him so much, and I believe that our future is still attainable if we put in the work. I just need him to tell me the truth. I genuinely don't think that Emily is lying, because she has no motive to lie. She doesn't gain anything if we split, because she isn't interested in him at all. I don't know what to do, and I don't know where to go. I shared some articles about trickle-truthing after an affair with him to try to help him understand what I am going through, but I don't know if that will help. Please don't judge me for not always being the best partner, and for staying with him. I just needed to be able to share this with someone. Thank you. She should take a break from him. She will not heal if he won't even admit the clear truth. She must need some distance from him to truly process things. Even at the risk of losing her, he still won't be truthful. She need to realize this first and then decide if he's worthy of another chance. Unless he has consequences from these past decisions, he will betray her again. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but this relationship is over. You and your BF have grown apart, and he is obviously possessed with either cheating on you or finding a new GF. What kind of man in a relationship keeps pictures downloaded onto their phone, and also has the time to set up a Tinder profile? You're not going to make him understand about the trickle-truthing he's spewing. There is no light bulb that is going to suddenly turn on for him. You guys are both too young to be dealing with these type of heavy relationship problems. Do you really think he has it in him to put in the work? I don't think so if he won't even begin to tell you the full truth. You did the right thing by reaching out to Emily, because now you have the real truth, and that truth in itself would get me to instant dump him. Love alone is not enough to make a relationship work. You still need communication, trust, and respect.